Hello there, listener, and welcome back to another episode of Sex Here and Now. As always, I'm your host, Matt Lockman. I'm a licensed clinical therapist and ASEX certified sex therapist. Before I get started, please subscribe and rate this podcast. And while you're at it, head on over to YouTube and follow Cleveland Sex Therapy for more sex positive content. This is truly a labor of love, and I wouldn't be here without your support. Spread the word of Sex Here and Now to all of your friends so that we can take over the world and create a place that is a little bit more affirming for everyone. This episode is for my vulva owners. No, not Volvo, vulva. No matter if you are cis, trans, man, woman, has a penis, or doesn't, we are going to stray away from the phallic shaped items in this episode so you can put away your penis and you can put away your strap on and dildos, because we're talking about some body parts that people consider less utilized or less talked about: the fingers and the tongue. Now, I'm not saying that you can never use a phallic shaped body part or toy ever again, dear listener. For some reason, our brains constantly go to this black and white thinking, as if you're hearing me say, castrate all penis owners and break all phallic shaped sex toys. That is pretty wild. And even if you prefer penetrative sex with this body part or these objects, what I'm saying is that variety is the spice of life. So the next time you have partnered sex with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your partner, just use fingers and tongues and let's see what we can experience. One of the reasons I am encouraging this is because so much of our cultural understanding of sex is still centered around penetration. You are taught that sex starts with foreplay and ends with penetration. And if penetration does not happen, then the encounter somehow doesn't count. But for many vulva owners, penetration is not actually the primary pathway to pleasure or orgasm. The clitoris has thousands of nerve endings, and most of the structure actually lives inside the body, wrapping around the vaginal canal like a wishbone. When we slow down and use fingers and tongues, we often access the parts of the body that are actually more responsive to touch and sensation. Before we go any further, we should probably talk a little bit about the different kinds of orgasms vulva owners can experience. You will often hear people talk about clitoral orgasms and vaginal orgasms as if they are competing with each other. But the reality is that the clitoris is involved in a lot of pleasure for vulva owners. Research constantly shows that the majority of women need clitoral stimulation in order to reach orgasm. The number changes depending on the study, but it is often reported that around 70 to 85% of women cannot orgasm from penetration alone. That is not a failure of the body, that is simply anatomy. The clitoris is the most nerve dense pleasure center in the vulva. So it would make a lot of sense that stimulating it directly with fingers or a tongue tends to be the most reliable path to orgasm for many people. Now, with that said, vaginal orgasms absolutely exist, and a lot of vulva owners love the feeling of penetration. Even if penetration does not always lead to orgasm, it can still feel incredibly pleasurable and emotionally connecting with a partner. Many people enjoy the fullness, the pressure, or the closeness that comes with it. Bodies are wonderfully diverse in how they respond to stimulation. Some people experience blended orgasms where both clitoral and internal stimulation are involved, and some people simply enjoy penetration as part of the overall experience. And yes, before anyone writes in asking about anal orgasms, those are real too. But that's a whole other episode. There is also something else that happens when we take penetration off the table for a bit. The focus shifts from performance to exploration. Fingers and tongues require presence, they require curiosity. You have to pay attention to how your partner is responding. Are they leaning into your body? Are they leaning into your touch or pulling away a little? Does lighter pressure work or firmer pressure? This kind of exploration naturally invites communication, which, as many of you know, is one of my favorite sex tips of all time. When we slow things down and get curious about each other's bodies, we create a much more collaborative sexual experience. Another thing I see in therapy is that many couples rush through this part of sex because they are trying to get to the main event. But what if this was the main event? When you allow fingers and tongues to take center stage, you often create more anticipation, more arousal, and more intimacy. The body warms up gradually, the nervous system relaxes, and partners often report feeling more connected because the focus is on sensation rather than simply reaching the end point. So here's your homework for this week. The next time you and your partner are intimate, make an agreement ahead of time that penetration is off the table. That's right, no penis, no strap on, no dildo. Just hands, mouths, curiosity, and communication. Treat it like a sensory exploration rather than a race to orgasm. My guess is that many of you will discover new erogenous zones, new rhythms, and maybe even a new appreciation for the body parts that were there all along. Sex Here and Now is written and recorded by me, Matt Lockman. For more resources, education, or support, you can find me on all social platforms at Cleveland Sex Therapy. Thanks for being here, and as always, stay curious.